A bit of perspective was what we reflected on last week. It meant having clear eyes to see the difference between what lasts and what doesn't last, like the dew that with the early morning sun passes away. Kohelet reminded us last week, transitoriness of transitoriness. Another translation puts it this way, and I love it, vanity of vanities. Jesus too would have us set our sights beyond earthly greed, beyond working for mere accumulation of material things. Take care, he says, that your heart is not overtaken by greed. Given the right perspective, we know that man ought to work for his keeps, not for his greed. Merely working for one's keep means one gets to a point when he has to say, enough. People who work on account of greed never will have enough. For the pull of the more, the better, and the greater simply does not reach a point of satiety. This Sunday, another perspectival concept juts out of all three readings. And the perspective does not have to do merely with things that last, but more so with the very last things, ta eskata in Greek, the ultimate realities of human creaturely existence. Wisdom refers to it in symbolic language as the time for the salvation of the just and the destruction of their foes. The letter to the Hebrews refers to it as a better homeland, a heavenly one, and speaks of God who has prepared a city for them. Something so important and valuable is not to be taken lightly, but prepared for seriously. Thus, the reminder from the Lord, stay awake and be ready, for you do not know on what day the Lord will come. Repeated one other time in the Gospel passage from Luke, you also must be prepared, for at an hour you do not expect the Son of Man will come. But I would like to take a little step forward this Sunday. These past 2 Sundays, we have been talking about the importance of having good vision, that is, seeing rightly. Indeed, as the GUI mantra puts it, what you see is what you get. Values seen for what they really are worth are values we work for, strive after, and aim at with the totality of who and what we are as persons. But what we value, we also love. Knowing always leads to loving. A known good is a good that attracts, that pushes us to act towards attaining it. Knowing good cannot be far from wanting good. What the mind sees as good, the heart wants as value. Insight cannot be far from heart sight. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, in his famous work Le Petit Prince, The Little Prince, puts it so well. It is only with the heart that one sees rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Mind sight, or what we often call insight, is not all there is in life. We also need heart sight. We also need to see clearly with the heart as we need to see with the mind. We need as much evaluative knowledge as conceptual knowledge. The first lines of today's gospel passage clearly point to the need for this heart sight as much as the need for insight. For where your treasure is, there also will your heart be. Peter Kreeft, writing about discernment in daily life, speaks about 7 foundational guiding principles. The first, it turns out, is what he calls hermeneutics of the heart. I love that phrase. The very first rule to follow is literally countercultural, so against the grain, as it were, as to seemingly be against common sense. People in our times would rather go for statistics, for scientific, verifiable, measurable, and quantifiable data. People would go generally for what the polls point to, the most popular decision, and what would make the majority of people happy. But Peter Kreeft wisely counsels what mass media does not counsel. Follow your heart. Follow where your heart leads to. And this does not mean being led by subjective and fleeting emotions. Far from it. It means first and foremost, having heart sight, being in love with God, being in touch with God in and through our capacity for a decision that springs from the biblical center of our personhood, the heart. St. Augustine knew it by experience, and he was right all along. He said, Ama et fac quod vis, love and do what you will. When we love, we see more, not less. We see what is right and proper, what is honorable, what is worthy of honor and praise. With proper heart sight, we will be led to do only that which is right and proper, what is godly, what is honorable, and worthy of praise. For it is only with the heart that one sees rightly. Today, the Lord invites us to see life and all it offers from the right perspective. And that right perspective is born from one's ability to allow room for the heart to do its proper role. Allow me to enumerate some of the characteristics of a person with the required heart sight and insight. First, the gospel passage tells us not to be afraid. One who sees rightly with the heart has a heart full of courage. Do not be afraid any longer, little flock, for your Father is pleased to give you the kingdom. Second, the Lord reminds us that a heart full of love is also a heart full of excitement and readiness for the coming of the Lord. Be like servants who await their master's return from a wedding, ready to open immediately when he comes and knocks. And third, a heart full of love is one imbued with a deep spirit of faithfulness. Blessed is that servant whom his master on arrival finds doing so, that which is expected of him. Knowing what's coming up ahead makes for good vision. Knowing what one ought to do because of what's sure to come and doing accordingly both make for heart sight. In Christian life, we need more than just insight. We need heart sight. For it is only with a believing and loving heart that one sees rightly and fully. And this, my dear friends, is your Kalakbay at Katoto in this week's episode of Puso sa Puso. Wishing you a blessed Sunday, everybody.